What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite techniques in Photoshop. It's one that I use a lot, and it's one that you guys ask for a lot, and it's super popular, and that is how to dodge and burn. So without getting too technical about what dodge and burning is and how it came from the film days and the negatives and holding things over but pulling things out with exposure and all that, basically in Photoshop, dodging and burning is a way to create contrast and change the exposure of certain parts of an image and also reshaping light. So that's a really powerful way of reshaping how we're seeing a light source or creating a new light source or creating shadow or anything like that. And it's super powerful tool. So I'm going to show you how I do it, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of some of the stuff that I use dodging and burning for. So let's jump in the computer and get started. Alright, so the most popular way, I think, and one of the ways that I use dodging and burning the most is with portraits. So I've got this portrait of Brittany that I took here. I've got everything else done to it that I already needed to do, but now for the finishing touches, I'm going to do a little dodge and burning. So this is how I create my dodge and burn layers. And like I said, there are tons of different ways to do this, but this is how I do it. So the first thing we need to do is create a new layer. So I'm going to do that by hitting Control-Shift-N. And then I'm going to go ahead and call this one dodge. The next thing we need to do, it's very important that you do it in this order and how I'm doing it. Before I change anything, before I hit OK, we're going to come down here to Mode, and we're going to go to Overlay, and then once Overlay is selected, we're going to hit Fill with Overlay Neutral Gray Color, 50%. And it's very important that you do that in that order. You don't click Fill first and then select Overlay. You got to select Overlay first and then check the fill box. Now we hit OK. Alright, so you'll notice that with this one highlighted, the whole dodge layer is 50% gray, and it doesn't do anything here. So now what we need to do is we're going to come over here and go to the dodge and burn tool. That's this guy right here, so you can hit O for short. And then if you right click this down arrow, then it will give you the options. What I want first is the dodge tool. So we're going to select that. I'm going to use my brackets on my keyboard to increase the size here. So what I was saying earlier about reshaping and adding light, that's what we're going to do. So we have this beautifully backlit subject here, and the backlight is all nice and everything, but the light in her face is lacking. So we're going to make that pop a little bit, and I'm going to try to bring out some natural features and do a little bit of reshaping. So for this, by default, I have it on midtones with an exposure of 5%. And that's pretty much, I don't really ever change that for the dodging. If you need to go stronger, you can increase the exposure, but I just don't recommend doing that because it can get too harsh too quick. So the only thing I'm going to be controlling is making sure I have my regular brush and that my hardness is all the way down to 0. So once I have that, I'm just going to start painting in light right here. And I'm going to do this very subtly so that I can just bring up where her cheekbones, where I want them to show a little bit. So by adding the light, that's making it look like that's where her cheekbone is the most prominent. And then I'm just going to go in here to a couple of more areas to brighten them up, and I kind of basically go on where light would naturally strike or where I would want the light to strike. So in this case, I want to accent this right here because the nose already has that little bit of light. So I'm just going to make that pop just a little bit, and that's really just going to help create the defining edge and the geometry between the nose and then the eye back here and help that 3-dimension. The next thing I'm going to do is zoom in, and I'm just going to brighten up the whites in her eyes a little bit. And then not too much because I don't want to go crazy with the whites of her eyes looking too unnatural, but I do want to come in here, and where this blue is, that's a reflection from the sky, I'm going to go ahead and make that even whiter and make it look like a really nice catch light. And then I'm going to accent some of these little naturally reflecty catch lights. So that's going to really help it pop. And then I'm going to brighten up just a little bit the outside of the brown color here of her eye, just to make that pop a little bit. And then I might even, and I'm going to come over here to her left eye, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to brighten up the center here, and then I'm going to just ever so slightly add a little bit of brightness so we can see how we're looking. Already you can see that definition that's being created there. I'm going to do a little bit on her lips here, and I'm going to follow that natural lighting pattern right there. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to accentuate her collarbone and the little V and the neck right here, which is already in this shot quite prominent, but I'm just going to do a little bit more. Alright, so without going too overboard, I think that's all I want to do. But you get the idea. This is how we can change things. If you want to also change somebody's jawline and make it more defined without using a liquify tool, then you can control where the shadow is. And for that, you would come down to the burn, and then you can burn in where you want them to focus. So that's too much, but you get the idea that you can really shape with that. All right, so let's take a look at another example. The other thing that I use dodge and burn for the most is landscape. So here I have this landscape, and I've already done some work to it. The last thing I want to do is accentuate some leading lines that are already naturally present here and just really make those pop. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. Control Shift N gives me a new layer. Come down here to overlay, fill with 50% gray, and OK. So I'm going to use both the dodge and the burn on this. First we're going to go with dodge, and you see these natural lines here. We're just going to bring those up a bit. And I'm going to come down here and follow the natural light a little bit with these lighter colored rocks. I'm going to try to paint on the light surfaces and just really accentuate that just a bit. I'm going to be careful not to go in the shadows too much. And then the last thing is I want to kind of accentuate this line up here, and you can tell there's no light up there, but I'm going to make it light. So now to really help that pop and give it more contrast, I'm going to come down here to the burn tool, and I'm just going to ever so slightly burn in some of these shadows and make them just a little bit darker. And that's pretty much it. That's all I want to do to this one. You can see the before and the after. So dodging and burning is great to work with the natural light and patterns that are already there, and then it's great to, like I did up here, create light where or darkness where there was none and kind of flip that. And then that just in this case, it gave me a little bit of an extra leading line to help point you towards that mountain. And then that's what these are doing in my case, is the leading lines in this road are much more prominent now, and they're leading me to the mountain and to the sunset. Alright, so here's one more way that I would use dodging, and like I said in the other stuff, there is a lot of different ways you could do this, either with the levels or the curves or a number of different ways. But for this, I'm going to use dodge and burn. I'm going to do the same thing, Control Shift N, new layer, dodge, blending mode, overlay, fill with 50% gray, and OK. So now I want to accentuate the Milky Way a little bit without destroying the rest of the image. So I'm going to come over here to the dodge tool first, and I'm just going to ever so slightly dodge in these brighter areas of the galactic core and some of these brighter stars and nebulae. It's really easy to go overboard on this, especially with the Milky Way, so just be careful. And then to help accentuate that, I'm going to go in here to burn, and we're just going to darken up the dark parts of the inner side of the galaxy there, just to help make that lighter part pop even more. So now you can see that that's pretty subtle, but it does make a little bit of a difference. One thing you can do, rather than keep dodging and burning, once you have the areas that you want, you can just hit Control J, and that will make a new copy of the dodge layer that you just did. So it'll basically double the effect that you just put on there. So, and then you could say, well, maybe that's too much. Then you could come up here and change the opacity and drop it down a little bit, something like that, and that's perfect. And you could keep making copies and copies and copies, and then you can just shift click those and then Control G for new group, rename it to Dodge, and there's my Dodge group. Now I can turn all of that on and off, and that's it. That's how I do my dodging and burning for the most part with landscapes and portraits and whatnot. Alright, so that was it. That's how I do dodging and burning, and like I said, there's many different ways to do this. This is just my preferred method, and it can be a little difficult at first if you've never done anything like this, using layers and creating new opacities and all of that stuff. But once you get the hang of it, just follow those steps, and it's super easy, and it will definitely help take your creativity of your images to the next level. So if you guys have any questions about anything I did or didn't go over concerning the dodge and burning, make sure you leave those in the comments below and I'll definitely answer them. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I've got new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Hit that like button if this video helped you out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.